Extended Access Control List or Extended ACL. In this video, I'm going to talk about the Extended ACL. You know that in previous video, we have learned about the Standard Access Control List or Standard ACL. Now I'm going to talk about a more advanced ACL or more advanced type of access control list. We call it the extended access control list. Okay, what is the difference between the ACL, standard ACL, and also extended ACL? You know it. I have talked about that, but let me to review. You know that in a standard ACL or STD ACL, we can configure the access control entries regarding to the source IP of the packet. This means that, for example, you can configure one source IP should be permitted, another source IP should be denied. Okay, but in the extended ACL or EXT ACL, we have more option for configuring the condition. For example, we can configure the condition according to the source IP, according to the destination IP, or the protocol, okay, and also a source port and also destination port. You will learn about them in this video, but let me to start step by step. For example, in the first part, I'm going to show you what is the difference between the extended ACL and also a standard ACL when we need to use the destination IP and also protocol. Look at here. In the first example, I'm going to show you how we can configure one extended access control list, and this extended access control list should refer to the source IP and destination IP and, for example, protocol. Okay, in the second example or in the third example, maybe we will talk about the source port and destination port. Look at here. Here we have a simple scenario. In this simple scenario that I'm going to use for the first standard extended ACL, we have three pieces in one LAN. This is the LAN 1. Okay, this is the LAN 1. And also here we have two servers in the LAN 2. Assume that the requirement of us is controlling the traffic between these two LAN 1 and LAN 2. Assume that the C4 is the server of one department, for example, the department of the sales, okay? And also the, for example, computer 1 is the computer of one employee in the department of sales. And also the C2 is one of the computers of the department HR, for example. And the C5 is the HR, for example, server. And also the C3, okay, is the computer of the boss of company, okay? And because of that, about the boss, we need to have connectivity to all servers C4 and also C5, okay? Let me to show you what is the requirement. The requirement of our policy is, first, we should access between the C1, okay, and also C4. This is the first requirement, C1 and C4, not the C1 and C5, because you know that C1 is working in another department than the C5. Because of that, this connectivity should be discarded, okay, from the C1 to C5. About the C2, we have the reverse direction, reverse position. The C2 should not have access to the C4, and but also it should has access to the C5, okay? After that, let me to configure the C3 for access to both the C4, okay, and for example C5. This is our policy, and we need to configure this policy. Let me to talk about that. You know that for this scenario, you cannot use the standard ACL. Why? Because in a standard ACL, you have only control on the source IP. For example, you know that C1 for some traffic, the traffic that should be forwarded to the C4 needs to have connectivity, but for other connectivities from the C1 to C5, we should deny it. Because of that, you cannot configure a rule in the R1 only according to the source IP. For example, assume that I configure permit, then 192.168.110. This means that you should pass the traffic of the computer 1. But if you use this command, you can see that all of the traffic of computer 1 now is passing from the router, and it is not okay. Because of that, here we need to configure, for example, this type of policy. If the source IP is 192.168, okay, 110, and destination IP is 192.168.210, the action is permit, okay. This is the pseudocode. I will show you the real code or real command of the access control list configuration, but this is the pseudocode. Assume that here we have a command. If the source IP is 192.168.110, destination IP is 192.168.210, the action is permit, okay. Also, you should configure the next rule. If the source IP is 192.168, for example, 110, and the destination IP is the 192.168.210, okay, or 211, the action is denied. This means that we need to configure some rules that in these rules we should use both the source and destination IP. Okay, let me to write the next rule. If the source IP is 192.168.111 and destination IP is 192.168.210, okay, we should deny the traffic. After that, if the source IP is 192.168.111 and destination IP is 192.168.211, the action is permit. Okay, the next rule. And also, we can configure the next rule, or for example, for computer 3. Okay, you know that here we expect to have connectivity from the computer 3 to the both computer 4 and computer 5. You can configure if the source IP is the 192.168.112, okay, and destination IP is any, okay, you should permit the traffic. Don't forget, if you use any, this means that, for example, here for another IP address also we have connectivity, but it's better to configuring only the source IP and also the required destination IP 210. Okay, this is the action is for example, permit, and then if the source IP is 192.168.112 again, and destination IP is 192.168.211, the action is permit. Okay, if you want to configure the ACL, it's better to configuring more exclusive ACs or access control entries. This is the pseudocode for our ACL. But now we have one important question: how we can configure the extended ACL? Let me to first talk about the overall structure of the extended ACL. Look at here. You know that in a standard ACL, okay, we have a list. We have a list of ACEs. Each ACE has one condition, okay, and one action. You know how we should process this AC, okay, this standard access list. You know that we are starting from the first line, and if the condition, okay, of the first line of the first ACE match with the traffic, we are doing the action and we don't, for example, check the next line. But if the condition doesn't match, we should go to the next it doesn't match with the condition, we should go to the next line, and again we should check the condition with the traffic. If the traffic match, we should do the action. If it doesn't match, we should go to the next line. And finally, if the traffic doesn't match with any other line, okay, finally we should drop the traffic. This is the standard ACL. Let me to say that about the extended ACL, we are doing exactly same. We don't have any difference between the standard ACL and extended ACL about the fundamentals rules, okay? Because of that, from this point of view, we don't have any difference. After that, you know that we should apply the standard ACL, okay, to the interface after the configuration. You know that we are applying, okay, this standard ACL in inbound direction, or outbound direction to one interface. Okay, this means that this ACL should be matched with the traffic that is entering to the fast Ethernet 00 or outgoing from the fast Ethernet 00. Again, about this, we don't have any difference between the standard and also extended ACLs. The only things that is differ between the standard ACL and extended ACL is that about the conditions, we have more options in the extended ACL. Because of that, it is so easy to configure a standard ACL, extended ACL. The first method of the extended ACL configuration is the configuration of the extended numbered ACL.